So Fox News has released the poll. Now, the reason that I'm interested in this poll, well, I like polls in general. I think they're fascinating, especially the trend line. But this poll came out after Sanders was ill, meaning this poll takes into account Sanders having the heart attack. That's why I'm interested in this. I was curious on whether or not he was going to lose ground or whether or not he was going to, stay the same, lose ground, or, and maybe in an odd case, people say, yeah, I love the fact he had a heart attack and they wanted to vote for him that much more. You never know. He didn't seem to lose ground. He kind of just floated. Warren has gained ground. Biden gained a little bit of ground. Interestingly to note, apparently, Elizabeth Warren has gained the Real Clear Politics average, meaning has taken over Biden on this front. Interesting. Now, of course, this stuff matters less than the state races, meaning from state to state to state, what the candidates are and the momentum that the candidate may get from winning the early states, those type of things. And I would even argue the debates, meaning as these debates kind of go further, we're going to get a crystallization of the election and what people's intention are in regards to the voting. What I can say is Warren's strategy in this has worked quite well. Ultimately, the truce that Sanders and Warren has worked more so to the benefit of Warren, I would argue, or at the very least, I think. In the debates, it's worked more to the benefit of Warren because it gave the impression of a Cutler Sanders, that these two are somehow a one-to-one, or at the very least are similar enough where you will go with the Warren as opposed to the real thing of a Sanders, missing the point that these quantities aren't the same at all. It's just so happened that you have all of these right-wing Democrats on stage, and so looking at the two, you can't, it's difficult to see the difference between the two because of the other people on stage, the relative distance between those things. Sanders seemed to have went with this notion of somewhat of a truce. That needs to stop. That's not necessarily doing him well from the standpoint of the polling, especially with this notion of Warren surging. And if Sanders is really intent on winning this race and not necessarily just pushing Warren to the left, all notions of a truce need to end. And how he's running the campaign needs to, to some degree, shift. This is Fox News. Joe Biden, 32%. Elizabeth Warren, 22%. Bernie Sanders, 17%. And nobody else is close. No one is even close. Kamala Harris is lurking about the single digits with 5. The previous month, Joe Biden had 29%. So he's gone up 3%. The previous month, Elizabeth Warren has 16%. So she's jumped 6 points. Sanders was at 18. He's gone down by 1. The debates that are coming up are going to set the tone. And again, it's kind of hard to even know what Elizabeth Warren's quote-unquote surge is really looking like, seeing as they've lavished so much praise on her from the standpoint of the media. It would be hard for her not to get a surge. But that's somewhat of a moot point, right? Media was always going to be somewhat of a stumbling block in regards to Sanders to try to get the nomination. He was always going to have to go around it in the same way that Trump was able to essentially supersede, or at the very least go around it. Gabbard didn't fare all that well in this with just 1%. And like I said, nobody else is even close. One thing is interesting and is going to be a problem for Trump. So when asked questions about, whether or not what Trump did was improper. Well, one other thing first. I've made this argument that Joe Biden's main thing is electability. Now, when they ask and compare people in the race to Trump, meaning Trump versus Biden, Trump versus Sanders, Trump versus one, those things are almost even. There might be like a 1-point variance. And yet, if you ask people who is more electable, Joe Biden gets 43%. The closest other person is 19% at Warren. And Sanders at 15%. Nobody's close. Isn't that weird? Who's more electable? Joe Biden, 49%. If it's between Trump and Sanders, or Trump and Biden, and Trump and Warren, the same. How weird is that? How weird is that? When you ask them in a head-to-head comparison, for the most part, people just give the numbers almost, we're giving the edge to Biden, Sanders, and Warren, but only by like 1 or 2 points. Meaning the electability stuff, it at some point goes away. I mean, the moment that you have a race where when you do head-to-head matchups, the person who's supposed to be the front runner, the more electable candidate, ends up essentially polling around the exact same thing as the other candidates who he's supposed to be more electable than. That's a problem, Joe Biden. That's a problem. Despite the fact that he gets the 43%. It's like, yes, you're more electable, but in the head-to-head matchups, not so much. Another point. I want to go Trump. So, the attacks on Trump have started to take root. What I mean by that is, if you look at the media, it's wall to wall. Trump is not working with a partisan witch hunt that's going after Trump, which is the weirdest thing in the world. And yet, that's the framing that they take. Trump is not working with the partisan Congress that is trying to go after Trump. But if you repeat this stuff enough, the media is running in circus enough, it sinks in. The same thing with the Russia stuff. If you ask people today, was Trump working with the Russians, you have a large number of people who say, maybe, but they would still go with this notion of the Trump and Russia thing. The Trump and Russia thing being a conspiracy theory is so saturated in society that despite Mueller, the Mueller thing almost didn't matter at that point. Kind of like Bill Maher. I don't care what Mueller said. I know what I see with my own eyes. You only see with your eyes what they've been essentially seeding the ground with. Same thing with this. With the Ukraine stuff. The catch here, though, there's a kernel of truth to this. It is somewhat improper for Trump to get world leaders to hit his political opponents. By the same token, you have political opponents that were dirty. The public is troubled by it. They asked the public, how much confidence do you have in these various organizations? The FBI, the Supreme Court, the CIA. 66% confidence in the CIA. This is Pompeo at the CIA. And right now, the person who's leading the CIA is Bloody Gina Haspel. Bloody Gina Haspel was caught destroying torture tapes when she was torturing people at a black site in Thailand, some of which ended up being innocent. This organization has been toppling governments, seeding the population with falsehoods and fake news in order to destabilize and destroy governments, including, I would argue, even to some degree, our own current population, if you're looking at Operation Mockingbird. 66% trust in the CIA.
We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
This is the organization that the country is saying they have nearly 70% trust in. That's astonishing. That's astonishing. And even sad to some degree. Congress, 45%. Media, 47%. And yet, they still trust media enough to essentially be able to ding Trump. Trump, 43%. Trump and media are trusted roughly about the same amount, give or take 4 percentage points, which is amazing since Trump lies constantly. Media lavishes all sorts of propaganda on the press, on the public, but still, they're in the same amount. Look at this one. Do you think the nation's economy is getting better or worse? 38%. If that number tanks, Trump is done. It doesn't matter who Democrats put up. If there is a recession, mark my words, if there is a recession and the economy starts to tank, or the public, like they do here, do you believe the economy is getting better? 38% say yes. 37% say no. 20% say stay the same. If these numbers change, Trump is toast. If these numbers change, Trump is toast. Now, Do you think President Trump should be impeached and removed from office? 51% say yes. That's a move. That's a change. That wasn't that high before. That means that the attacks on Trump have started to take root. 43% say no. I'm in the no bunch. Let's see. Do you think congressional Democrats really think Trump committed impeachable offense, or do they just want him politically? 48% say impeachable offense, 45% say they just want to hurt him politically. 7% say they don't know. The answer is they want to hurt him politically. Even though he has, it's dubious ethics, to say the least, for the president of the United States to try to get other countries to go after their political opponents. The problem is the DNC set the precedent by working with the Ukrainian government to attack Trump. The woman who was responsible for working with that chalupa was on Twitter today going after Lee Stranahan. It was an amazing thing. I saved the tweet because I want to talk about the tweet. I guess my point is this. Donald Trump. Oh, good. This is the sample size. White men, white women. Jesus Christ. Do you approve or disapprove of the job Trump is doing? 43% approve, 53% disapprove. That's not good. I'm going to put this here. The ones that I was interested in had to do with the Democratic primary. But there are all sorts of stats that are associated with this. It's really difficult to read, and so it's going to be difficult for you to see. So I'm not even going to try to force your eyes to try to latch on to this. Sanders, truce needs to end. If there was any official or unofficial truce with Warren, if you really want to win this election, that truce needs to end now, today. These numbers are too close. And while I think that there may be some kind of an oversampling because youth don't vote as often, and so people don't necessarily count them as highly, sometimes in the polling and the way the polling methodology is done, that's going to be the highest vote total when it comes out, and that's Sanders' highest vote total. So there may be leeway in this where Sanders might be a little bit higher than what the polling is showing. But I would be a lot more comfortable if that polling was showing him polling higher, and I would be a lot more comfortable. Because initially, at one point, Sanders was surging, and at some point, he seems to have leveled off. That truce needs to end. Full stop. That truce needs to end. Yeah, I do this one in a different video. But Fox News poll, I mean, it's not that he's in a horrible position. 17% is not horrible. It's just, it puts him in third place, 4 points away from Warren, several points away from Biden, and it seems Biden numbers, for the most part, have stabilized, at least on this poll. In the average, apparently Warren has taken hold. Like, share, subscribe. And this is a 3-point deviation, so the poll is not necessarily all that bad, and it is one of the polls that counts for the DNC's essentially be on stage. But again, we need to see what Tulsi is going to do, because Tulsi is threatening to boycott the election, so who knows? Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.